What's up, bro? It's your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to another episode of the Mike Muse Show. I am super excited to be in conversation with my next guest. I have so much respect for this individual. I've been so fascinated by his journey. I'm so fascinated by his conversation that he has. I am so fascinated by the courage that it takes for him to say the things that he says without consequence and without thinking. And there's something about speaking your mind that is so powerful to me. Even if I may disagree with some of his opinions, I just love where I know where I stand with people and their opinions. An audience, this is a special day for me because I have Stephen A. Smith with me, but I have three muses to my work. I've done TED Talks about this. They are NWA, they are Billie Holiday, and it is sports, and in particular football. I think football has a way of moderating social construct for us, and is the muse of my work. And so I literally couldn't think of a better person to have coming on just to talk sports and social construct with me just a little bit. Is somebody who I admire, and I'm so thankful he's on the show, Mr. Stephen A. Smith. What is happening, sir?
What's going on, Mike? How you doing, man? How's everything? Pleasure to meet you, bro.
Yeah, no, man, it's good to meet you, man. Thank you for being a part of the show. I really wanted to say, just salute to you, man. Congratulations for everything. Like, you have shown somebody like me who never saw himself in media, bro. Like, I have an industrial engineering degree. I did nuclear chemical research. And so media was never on my trajectory, my journey, but here I am. And so it's always great to see people like you who are creating this space to show us where we can go with it, right? And so for you, did you even recognize, I always talk about that line from Big, I never thought hip hop would take it this far, right? Did you even see how far sports commentary can go to actually moderating social discourse here in America?
I'd like to say no, because, I got started before the advent of social media, obviously. And so, social media has taken it to another level because, they've given a voice to the voiceless itself. And so many people have an opportunity to express their thoughts, their opinions, and things of that nature. And that's just catapulted things to another level, just across the board for the world of sports. Obviously, you look at the world of television, particularly broadcast television, and you see these multi-billion-dollar contracts that is being signed between the leagues and the respective networks. And as a result, what comes into the fold is, big time money. And with big time money comes a lot of big time responsibilities. You see leagues, the amount of people that they hire, the level of diversity that's addressed or not addressed, racism, prejudice, all of these different things, corporate America and how that intertwines with everything that we're about or everything that we're pursuing, and how you ultimately will be confronted by those realities. You just sit there and you recognize the fact that sports is just a microcosm of our society as a whole, what we have to deal with, what we're living in, some of the trials and tribulations, the challenges that come along with it. And as a result, it creates an endless level of dialogue that's out there for us to all engage in. We used things that transpire in the world of sports as an excuse or a conduit to touch on so many other things that we otherwise would not have the license to touch on. And because of that, the water cooler or the barbecue or the barbershop is not the only places that you have these conversations. Now they're being had everywhere because it's relevant everywhere, because sports has served as a role to be played in basically creating and provoking the level of dialogue and discourse that we now have in our society and throughout this world. And so that's how I looked at it. I didn't see all of that coming. But once it had arrived, I certainly recognized that I was on top of it, and I used that as a means to really engage in the kind of discussions that I've always been interested in having. Because contrary to popular belief, I'm really not that interested in talking just sports all the time. I like using sports to get into bigger umbrella type issues that affect folks far beyond the stratosphere of the sports world.
I love how you talked about sports as like a conduit, right? That you talked about the water cooler dialogue. You thought about as a conduit to talk about other bigger issues that I play, which is why I love football. If you take Saturday football, I'm a Michigan man, but I love Big Ten sports. So I hate to even talk about
Alabama.
Bro,
All right.
we need it. But even you think about the University of Alabama, which is, a powerful house, right? But they have, the state of Alabama has such a complicated history with sports. University has, with race. The university has such a complicated history with race, but yet here we see these Black bodies on this field, but surrounded by these white people in the stadiums, but they're cheering for this Blackness. But the idea is, how safe are they once they leave that field, right? You think about what happens on Sunday football and just the type of discourse that domestic violence was able to have with the Ray Rice scenario. You think about the Michael Sam with the LGBTQAI situation that arose. You think about what happened with Colin Kaepernick and the Supreme Court justice at the time tweeting out about him. Football has this way of capturing us, as you said, at that water cooler moment to highlight issues. Yes, we've been talking about these on the side, different silos, but the amount of one time, the veracity that comes with sports and football in particular to highlight these issues is so powerful. And yet we don't really have, until recent people like you came along, people to really talk about it, right? We always had this narrative of shut up and dribble, athletes to just be an athlete, right? And I never really saw a sports analyst really feeling comfortable getting into this space. When did you see that moment where it began to shift, where you like, you know what, because you said you're on top of it, like, you know what, like, I'm gonna lean into this.
Well, I was covering Allen Iverson.
Oh,
Remember, I covered Allen Iverson the first about 10 years of his career. And I was the backup beat writer his rookie year, 1996. And I was the beat writer the next 6 years. And so what you have to remember is that I covered every single game of Allen Iverson's first 10 years in the first 6-7 years in the NBA. I covered every single game, and I should say I was a beat writer because I got promoted to NBA columnist, but in about year 5. But I was there every day, and I saw the cornrows and the tattoos, and this mentality that he just bucked society as a whole because he felt society betrayed him, and that his loyalty lied with those he knew and those he loved and cared for more so than anything else, and how that contributed to things that worked to his advantage and also things that worked conspicuously to his disadvantage. And to see how he was embraced by some and abhorred and ostracized by others, how he was loved as a basketball player, but how people weren't interested in inviting him into their living room, how the cultural impact that he had, the way he dressed and carried himself, served in positive ways to some people, but in very, very detrimental ways to others. And to see that dichotomy that exists, how challenges were faced each and every day, and how he was stigmatized, and how there were some people like myself who were looking to look deeper than just the veneer of what he would show on the outside. And then there were others who were not willing to do so. But also somebody like me who was willing to look deeper and go deeper and know more about him. I still pass judgment on the veneer or the cover that he provided, not on him, but on a detrimental effect that it would ultimately have on him someday. As you categorize those things and, and classify those things with specificity, what happened is ultimately folks started turning on the messenger, because I'm sitting there thinking about, now I'm not taking sides here. I'm just highlighting to you what this man is going to go through because of the effect that people don't want him to have on our society. And that led to different discussions where people would come at me. And the only reason why they would tend to back off was because of my fearlessness, my willingness to speak my truth and what I perceived as being the truth, but also the fact that for the most part, he would back me. There was no one he trusted in the media more than me. There was no one he would talk to more than me. Even when I was critical of him and we went through times where we didn't even communicate with one another, the players, his own teammates and coaches and executives over the franchise would say he and I were just like a married couple. We wouldn't talk. We didn't, walk by one another, ignore each other. And everyone knew that ultimately we would make up because we had that kind of love for one another. And there was a level of understanding and respect that we had for one another. It's just that we didn't see eye to eye because of our respective occupations. And sometimes that would clash. But ultimately, we band together when it came to disseminating a message for the masses to absorb, to understand there was a lesson to be learned through all of these things. We knew that, and we were in on it together, even though we never really communicated about that portion of it.
Stephen A. Smith, it's a good thing that we're doing this thing virtually, because if I was with you in the studio, I would be hitting you right now in your arm, right? Or throwing my shoe at you for nailing it the way that you did. For you to bring Allen Iverson's conversation, I wasn't even thinking about Allen Iverson at the time, but it's so perfect when you think about this explosion of social construct meets an athlete and how rebellious that he was. You know, we're coming off of the Met Gala right now, and there's always a saying that I'm thinking about the cornrows, where cornrows were deemed as this rebellious state, this criminality was associated with it, this ghetto-ness that was there. And there's this T-shirt that I saw recently where it said, "It's ghetto until Vogue says it's not," right? And so now cornrows are accepted, but at a time when cornrows were not accepted. You know, I'm thinking about the rebelliousness of the Fab Five, bringing in the baggy shorts into the University of Michigan, go blue all day, and Chris Webber just recently get the Hall of Fame. Shout out to you, Webb. But these are the times that weren't, popular. So for you, Stephen, like you are the culture, you of the culture, Black man, it's a Black man to another Black man, Allen Iverson. What was it like? I mean, I hear you talking about you covering it, you did the beat and then you became the columnist for it. But as Black man to Black man, you saw the hits I was taking. Take your journalist hat off. What was it like for you as a Black man seeing this unfold? I'm very curious.
It was difficult at times because in the case of somebody like Allen Iverson, I had a lot of love for him. Now, there's a line that has to be drawn in the sand because I have to be objective as a journalist at the time where I'm covering you. So if you shoot 2 for 20, I got to call it like I see it. If you playing bad, I got to call it like I see it. If you're doing things that are detrimental to your health, which ultimately can impact your game, I have to call it like I see it. And that was the hard part. The easy part for me was actually embracing coming to his defense against those who would use it as an excuse to castigate him and judged him with a level of finality I did not believe he deserved. For example, if you want to judge him by the company he kept, well, let's not forget he was thrown in prison. He was unfairly incarcerated for a lengthy period of time, sentences to be served concurrently, and things of that nature because of the bowling alley brawl in Virginia. Let's not forget that the very people that you're castigating and you're basically demeaning are the only people who stood by his side and had love for him and were willing to uplift him when nobody else was willing to do so. Let's not forget that when he decided to wear his baggy pants and do the cornrows and the tattoos, it was a sense of freedom, sure. And you could look at that and say he's going too far. Well, that would be easy for you to say because you never lost your freedom. He did. And so him being incarcerated and having to go through what he went through and feeling how inherently unfair and cruel it was to him was something that resonated. And then you take that into account and then you go back the other way and say, all right, AI, I agree with you on this. I understand exactly where you're coming from, but that's still looking backwards. How about looking forward? How about making sure that you do what you did in Orlando in 1999 during a playoff series against the Orlando Magic when you rolled up at a press conference in a black pinstripe suit? And I was jumping up. I was going crazy because I saw you suited down and I couldn't believe you were suited down. Imagine if you had diversified your look, had created an imagery of yourself where they never see you coming, where they were never able to just predict the cornrows and the tattoos all over your body and the baggy pants and the sweatshirts and all of this other stuff. Maybe you should have mixed it up a little bit. Why? Because Allen Iverson had a profound impact on a generation on a come up who can't get away with wearing your clothes and showing up with cornrows and tats all over their body and are going and expect to succeed in corporate America because their game ain't good enough to be the former #1 overall pick in the NBA draft and would end up pocketing in excess of $200 million. They weren't that good. You are. So it's understanding what you bring to the table. And I usually use myself as an example. I actually like wearing suits. Yes, I pride myself in my wardrobe and I love being suited down, but I also love my jeans and my sneakers and my sweatshirts and my baseball cap. And I love my shades and all of that other stuff. Well, guess what? I don't get to show up on TV like that every day. You know why? Because that's not what ESPN wants. That's not what corporate America is looking for. That's not the imagery that they want disseminated to the masses for people on the come up to think that, oh, you could just look any old way you want, how you want, whenever you damn well please, while you have your hand out for somebody else's money. It doesn't work that way. So it's important to send the message of versatility, understanding to the making sure that everyone understands. All of us to some degree, even Mike Muse and others, have to capitulate in some way at some point. None of us get to do whatever we want to do, whenever we want to do it, however we want to do it, without giving a damn about anybody else and expecting to succeed at the same time. The world will send you a message. You don't get away with that level of autonomy because no one else does.
Well, Stephen, so you're bringing so much into conversation now. Like you're bringing identity, representation, code switching, duality, roles and responsibilities, mentorship, not assumed, role model kind of thing. I want to just speed ahead just a little bit because now you're invoking something in me where I think a lot that is having my private conversations. I don't even talk about this publicly, but I'm wondering who becomes the face of the NBA, right? Who becomes the face of the NFL.
Once LeBron leaves?
No. Hold on, before you go that. Meaning, is there anything to do with like race or colorism, right? Who becomes the face of the NBA and of the NFL? Is it strictly still based upon your athletic numbers and your stats and your ability to win championships? Or does colorism, light skin, dark skin, cornrows, unkept hair? Yeah, I'm curious.
Follow the money, bro.
I think you know where I'm going with this.
What I'm trying to say is that we got to stop making it more complicated than it is. Mm-hmm. Whatever sells is what they're going to market. And whatever they market, meaning whoever they are. Now, obviously, Black folks spend a whole bunch of money. You understand? Mm-hmm. And there's people out there, leagues, professional leagues. That Black audience is incredibly important to them. I know for a fact that ESPN cares about its Black audience. It monitors its Black audience. What we like, what we gravitate towards, what we expect to see, et cetera, it plays a role. First Take's been number one for 9 years for a reason. Okay,
Flex.
9 years and counting. It's the reason. And it damn sure wouldn't be number one if I were ignoring what the Black audience wants. And so you have to pay attention to that. But that's not the only audience that's spending dollars. And so as a result, you have to pay attention to it. Again, you have so many people that want to do what they want to do as opposed to doing what the audience says it wants done. You have to pay attention to the audience. It's not the executive per se. If an executive wants you to do what they want to do and they're not paying attention to the audience, they're not going to keep their jobs very long. If a talent doesn't pay attention to the audience, they're not going to keep their jobs very long. And the reason is the same. They're not going to be as effective in the eyes of the consumer as they should be. And that's what you have to pay attention to along the way. So once upon a time, when the white population was in excess of 80%, you could have that white audience and you could prop up that white star and you good to go. But now the population is at 60% and dissipating. The Hispanic population has grown exponentially. That's an audience you have to pay attention to. The Black audience hasn't faded. That's an audience you have to pay attention to. And when you pay attention to these things and you see what they want, that gives you an indication of the kind of things you should be doing if you're in the business of being successful. And from that success breeds all the other things that you do. I can say things that I want to say now that I could have never thought about saying 9 years ago. But when you number one and you established yourself and your cachet and your significance, then you can branch out and do other things. Otherwise, it's incredibly risky and you can get cut off at the knees before you even start walking.
Mm. Well, Stephen A. Smith, I don't want to have a lot of time with you, but I kind of want to, if you could peel back the layers a little bit more about that in terms of understanding your audience. Like, so whose responsibility is that then? Is that the athlete's responsibility to understand the audience, understand the freedom that they have or don't have, to what you were saying earlier? Or
Well,
is that the suit's job to understand the audience and then to figure out who they want to prop up?
it's all of the above. Don't you have a producer? Don't you have assistants? You don't do what you do by yourself. You might be the one in front of the camera and the microphone right now talking to me, and you might ultimately oversee a lot of different things, and ultimately it comes down to you. But it's not like you're devoid of taking advice from somebody. And some of that is based on data. Some of that is based on what the audience is telling you it wants and expects from you. Years ago, when ESPN sat up there and said, we got to venture away from the politics to some degree because we're a sports network. You had some people who took offense to that. I did not. Why? Because I happen to know that when people tune into ESPN, they're not expecting political pundency. They don't mind your thoughts and opinions about things that are political or things that are social issue related or what have you. But the primary reason they're tuning into ESPN is because they expect their sports. And if you do something at the expense of giving them sports, you're going to cost yourself, because that's not what they tune in for. You can use sports to venture into other areas that are somewhat relatable to sports. You can even venture out to things that are not relatable to sports. But the meat of what you provide has to live up to their expectations. Otherwise, they're going to change the channel and go somewhere else. And you have to understand that in whatever you do. You don't tune into Mike Muse to hear opera. I don't think so. You don't tune in to CNN to hear sports. You don't tune in to ESPN to hear politics. You don't sit there and buy the Financial Times to read about hip hop. It doesn't. What I'm saying is, all of these things, you got to know what people are looking for, and you have to deliver what they expect and branch out from there. You can't give them something that they didn't plan on having at the expense of their expectations, because then you're not feeding the consumer that you supposedly in pursuit of.
Man, Stephen A. Smith, I gotta let you go because I don't want to keep your time, but I can talk to you hours. I just hope and pray I can get you back to the Mike Muse show, man, because now you're dealing in my bag. I love data. And I love how data for me drives me to solutions and strategy, because you understand the data, you can better create a solution and a strategy with the mixing in of your constitution and the cultural experiences that you have. I want to, finally, let me just get to this point. I want to talk to you about Vlad versus Otane. I want to talk to you about college athletes being paid, all that kind of good stuff. But I'm a Michigan man. And I will fail my audience who knows that I go blue every Saturday so hard on that. What are your thoughts about boys' chances this football season? Maybe not to win a national championship, man, but can we get in the top 10, do you think?
You ain't winning no damn national championship.
No, I said not. I said, no, I know that we're not. No, I said we're not winning, but can we get to top 10?
I will say this to you. I like Harbaugh a lot, but at some point in time, it ain't everybody else's fault. It's yours. In terms of who you recruit, in terms of your ability or lack thereof to find that quarterback, in terms of coordinators that you hire, rehire, et cetera, you got to beat Ohio State. You got to beat Ohio State. You've won, you've had eight win seasons, you've had 10 win seasons. You haven't completely wet the bed and all of this other stuff, but you haven't been really relevant in the national title picture, and you haven't beaten Ohio State. One or the other has to happen.
Bruh,
you got to beat Ohio State, or you got to be in the national championship picture. And it's really both, because to be in the national championship picture, you're going to have to beat Ohio State. And so you're going and this year with Stroud at the quarterback position for Ohio State, who's young, it's a perfect opportunity for you to really, they just lost to Oregon. They can be had supposedly. If you're Michigan, you shouldn't be thankful, because that puts even more pressure. Because if Ohio State was a juggernaut, then what you would have is people praying and hoping you don't get blown out if you're Michigan.
Yeah.
But because Ohio State is vulnerable, now the expectation is you should be able to beat Ohio State. And so as a result of that, if you don't do it again, it's like, damn, here we go again, same old Jim Harbaugh, and that's the problem.
Folks, that's the time. We talk about data, knowing the market audience. All you have been booster donors. I love them out there. Listen to what Stephen A. Smith just said. I'm saying the same thing he's saying. He said it for me. We already know what it is. This year, put up or shut up. Let's go. Stephen A. Smith, thank you, brother, for all that you do. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for having such a great conversation today, man. I wish you all the best. I look forward to having you back on sometime, man.
No problem. All the best to you, man. Take care of yourself. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Take care, brother.
All right.
Peace.